We're back. You're listening to Tuesdays with Tormala. Rick Tormala here, and we're talking to Dr. Norm Kurland, and we're talking about the Just Third Way, the Capital Homesteading Act, and you were just in the midst of.
One point I wanted to make: there was a case in Michigan, Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, when Henry Ford had partners, Dodge and Cousins and others, and he helped destroy the idea of property within corporate equity. Now, what property is, and it's very important to understand, it's not the thing you own, it's the powers and rights you have, especially the rights of having a voice, and also, but most important, is the right to the fruits of what you own. Henry Ford gave out dividends and then decided he didn't want to pay. He wanted to retain earnings in the corporation in order to finance growth. Well, Dodge and Cousins were minority owners, and Henry said, no, I'm not going to pay out my dividends. And they said, well, wait, you're violating our property rights, Henry. If we own the tree, all the apples belong to us. Property says, if you want to grow, issue new shares. Okay, the courts in Michigan decided that Henry Ford was right, but the courts were wrong because they violated private property, a natural law right. It precedes the United States. It goes way back. It's just a basic right of being a human being. And to deprive people of that property, and that's the way the corporate equity is today. If you're a shareholder, you have no right to a dividend. It's only if the board of directors or whoever controls the board decides you get a dividend.
Well, we also have to end corporate personhood, but anyway.
Well, that's another matter, and I happen to agree with you. But I'm saying that once you see that corporations should be encouraged to issue full dividend payout shares in a way in which any citizen, every man, woman, and child, could be able to acquire it on credit, repayable with the future dividends, you now have a way to finance faster rates of growth, again, begin to capture markets that we've lost to lower wage countries like China and India, and we begin to get ourselves on a growth pattern. Even today, the Wall Street Journal said Japan is on its way out. It's no longer. It's now lost its ability. It has a net trade imbalance.
Well, I think China's going to end that way.
And we're going to be the same way because we got people, older and older people, on entitlements, and eventually the roof is going to collapse.
Well, Norm, the group here has a couple questions, and Leonard or Paul or Peter, you want to start?
Okay. Dr. Kurland, we were just curious as to how you reconcile the needs of the modern state with the kind of revenues that are needed to conduct it, and whether or not this tax schema that you have outlined for us will be sufficient to meet those needs. How do you balance the tax revenue with the expenses that the modern state seems to be responsible for?
Right. Well, it's been responsible since the 30s as we moved into the New Deal and then the Fair Deal, etc. So that we have now done things through government that would before that time we were doing outside of government. But in any event, the answer is really to get away from growing the government to growing the power of the people to earn their own and keep their own and make government dependent on the people. So how do you do that? The key is to grow the economy faster. During the Second World War, we were growing at rates of 15% a year. You had no unemployment. How do you create those kinds of growth rates, even 10% a year? If we could get to 5% a year, I think the economy, that we have enough unemployed, underemployed people that we could grow faster, let's say 10% a year. At that point, people would be earning more money, and there'd be less need for redistributed income.
Norm, how do we get that engine going? I mean,
it's both. It's the tax system and the monetary system. You have to make sure that you lubricate the engine. And what you did in the Second World War is you did it with government debt. You financed the Second World War with government debt and for producing, not for consumption, but for weaponry.
Well, the Keynesian has come out. But let me ask Peter, as a manufacturer. I'm dragging you into this, whether you want to come or not, Peter. But it's very practical on a micro level. You're a manufacturer. How many are you hiring people right now? Are you growing?
Yes, we're growing.
By what percentage?
Oh, wow, 10% probably. I bet it's a peculiar thing. I mean, so many companies have gone out of business. The rest of the work is going to those who are still around.
So the ones that have died, you're cannibalizing their, not by desire, but that's how it goes.
It walks in the door.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So if so Peter's operating like that right now.
Right.
I think everyone's worried about.
Well, let me pose a question that's occurring to me a lot in this, because we're talking about basically democratizing ownership of all these various aspects of our economic system. Is that the thing that occurs to those of us who have to own and run companies is that, well, this sounds like you're going to need an awful lot of different management groups. And the owners are going to need to somehow select the best management people to run these things. This is sounding like, I mean, right off the bat, to me, this is sounding like a ballot box nightmare of, I mean, if we think our, November in, every 4 years ballots are long, this would be, Lord knows how much voting the citizens would have to do to elect management boards, representatives, whatever, to all these different entities. Is right off the bat is becoming how the citizens become highly knowledgeable owners or stockholders, shareholders, or whatever into this thing is striking me as quite a difficulty.
Right. No, I have no doubt that we're totally uneducated about ownership. And I have a business that puts together employee stock ownership plans, 100% leverage buyouts of companies by workers. And workers are not necessarily managers. So you do need qualified managers, no question about it. And so education is going to be a terribly important thing. But just as in the Second World War, you began educating people on the job. And we have, we've been able to finance buyouts without the workers putting up a penny.
Well,
even failed companies, we were able to arrange for the credit financing under existing laws. So we're not even talking about capital homesteading. Under existing laws, you can borrow and repay the entire debt on pre-tax rather than after-tax dollars. It can be done so that there's no corporate taxes whatsoever. If you have an S-Corp ESOP in which everybody has a W-2 compensation in the company. So,
I just have a question, just because I've heard this litany repeated on the various economic shows that are on TV and various people, and I've read about it. And what it concerns the idea of capital.
Hold on, Paul. I think we have a caller. Do we have a caller?
Yes, we do.
Okay, who is it?
PJ. My name is PJ.
Okay, PJ, you got a question?
I do. That's more about the Fed, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Who makes the decisions within the Fed? For example, the raising and lower of the Fed funds rate and the quantitative easing. Has that just Ben Bernanke, or is that voted on by all the banks?
It's the board here in Washington. It's made up of Bernanke and a few appointees, plus bank-appointed people from the different regions.
And then how much would the Fed Open Market Committee have? Will they have any influence on their decision-making?
How much do they what? I'm sorry.
How much influence would the Fed Open Market Committee have on the decision-making?
Well, that becomes the means by which we finance our debt, deficits. And the deficits, there's hidden deficits of what some people say $70 trillion. I have a study done by the Peterson Foundation that said that every household has a hidden debt of $455,000 based on because the baby boomers are coming into Social Security and Medicare, and the entitlements are increasing. These are hidden. This is and the Fed is there to continue the system the way it's going.
Wow.
They're not doing anything to empower the people. And that's the issue.
Is that where they got the? Is that, Norm, where they got the 7.5 trillion to give to the other banks in 2009?
Well, what they do is authorize the discounting of that paper with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve can then either issue currency or have a deposit account in the Federal Reserve for backed by the government paper.
So it's kind of voodoo economics.
The Fed holds on to it, or they can peddle it off to the Federal Reserve. Behind the Federal Reserve is all debt paper. No gold, no assets, all non-productive.
PJ, did that answer your question?
You have one other follow-up, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
We can clearly see the private sector's representation in the Fed, but who represents the public's interests?
Whoever. Could you repeat?
I'm sorry. We can see, obviously, the private sector's influence in the Fed. Who? I think
because all your schools of economics ignore ownership as a way to distribute income.
Norm, I think the question is
productive capacity and consumption capacity.
Norm, I think the question is, just interrupt, as I always do.
Sure.
The question, I believe, is who is going to watch out for the taxpayers, right? Is that right, PJ?
Right, the public's interest, correct.
Right now, it's supposed to be the politicians.
Yeah, well,
but the politicians are being bought.
Okay, who would do it under your plan? Yeah, everybody's shocked here.
That's why I said under our plan, we would say that the Federal Reserve, if you believe in democracy, you should let the people, you should educate them, but let the people have the power. Over the regional Fed. If you did that, then you would, again, all 12 districts would be the source of financing future growth out of future production, future savings. There's a fallacy in most of the schools, in all the schools of economics, that you need savings. By that they mean past savings, which automatically means that ownership and ownership power stays in the hands of a tiny fraction of humanity, and these are the ones who can who give the money to make sure that garbage is being peddled in all the schools of economics. Nothing about ownership. And if we want to, that's why I read that thing in the beginning. If we want to go toward a totalitarian system, we're on our way.
So you're not advocating, Norm, a capital homesteading czar, right?
No, I think that
I kind of wanted that position.
Is the citizen. You want the concept of America was that every person should be the sovereign, and government should be subordinate to the citizens.
Okay. Is that okay, PJ? I think we lost him, but I think he answered his question. So, Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sir Paul. You were making a point of some sort.
Well, my point was just that I hear constantly the litany of basically capital is completely mobile now. You live in a global marketplace.
True.
And so literally capital will go wherever they can get the best returns. So you're saying,
what kind of capital are you referring to?
Investment
Financial capital or real capital?
Real cash, he's talking.
There's a difference.
Speak into the microphone.
Well,
please.
I guess, I'm assuming that it's the capital that the lack of investment here is occurring. That investment, that money is being taken somewhere else to build factories and to build
in China.
India. But it's but they're making those decisions, and it's the old Ross Perot conundrum. It's like the giant sucking sound.
Right.
Well, unless we're willing to basically lower our standards to try and compete in a global market, we had an advantage after the Second World War. All the other economies were wrecked.
Right.
But we don't have that advantage anymore.
No, but we still have.
We've got another call. Hold on a second. Caller, are you there? Hello? No. Okay, go ahead, Norm. Sorry.
Yeah, but we have to look in the physical potential of America. We're losing a lot of our technological edge.
But under your Homesteading Act, how would it empower the workers to get good paying jobs?
Oh, because if the economy can grow, it has to grow in a way in which you generate consumption incomes. You can't consume what isn't being produced.
But when
we start with very simple basics. If you miss that, there's no sense in talking.
No, okay, we've got another caller. Are you there, caller?
Yes, this is actually Drew again. from D.C. I've been following the
Hello,
show.
Drew.
It's very interesting. How are you?
Good, good. Go ahead.
I wanted to share a quick quote. And it says, if one accepts the modern American credo that the government should not tell one how to live his life, and that the government cannot and should not legislate morality or trample on personal rights, an attitude nicely summarized, I think, by the famously liberal Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun in one of his well-known dissents. I'm going to read that statement from Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun. He said, "The most comprehensive of rights and the right most valued by civilized men is the right to be let alone, and the concept of privacy embodies the moral fact that a person belongs to himself and not others, nor to society as a whole." And I'd like to basically, the reason why I'm calling in with that quote is to basically reflect on the fact that we started this country with this notion of personal property as a right. And in fact, on Article 17 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that citizens of the world have a natural right to private property. And that kind of discussion has been sort of swept under the rug and pushed aside, and that is fundamental to be basically bringing that back out into the public discussion and say, we all have rights. All of us have a shared right of all of the natural resources on the planet, and this discussion is not happening, and that's why we're involved in these financial meltdowns that we're involved in right now.
Well, Drew, you're with the American Revolutionary Party, right?
No, I'm actually with the Justice Party.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The newly formed one.
Confusing the parties, because yours sounded kind of libertarian there.
Well, I guess a lot of these concepts are bleeding into each other, and what people don't realize is as long as wealth is concentrated into very few, it's basically trampling on the rights of all of us. And I think this Occupy movement is basically a blessing and long past due, because so much political power and corporate power and it's just been concentrated and reconcentrated year after year after year, and we need to talk about these issues and get the power back to the people.
I don't have a problem with that, Drew. I have a problem with the right privacy extending and getting into the area of human life and promoting the culture of death. That's where my problem is. But we can do another show. I think that you
I think there should be more shows. In fact, your show is a blessing. In fact, the corporate media is controlled by a very few as well. I mean, it's concentrated into six big conglomerates, and I think that this discussion needs to happen. And that's one of the things that the Occupy movement is bringing out, is that people should be engaged in this debate and talking about these issues and finding solutions to problems. And the fact that we're not, it is a problem.
I agree. Well, we need to support the dignity of workers and empower them, but we also need to defend life from the womb to the tomb.
I agree with that. I would agree with that statement. But I just wanted to thank you on air and thank Norm. And I think that these discussions are really helpful, really useful. And I think I wish more people were tuning in right now. And I'll try my best to help spur the debate. I'm trying to launch a sort of a national town hall, basically doing exactly what you're doing on the radio, but within the university system, so that the students can get engaged in talking about debt and student loans and talking about what issues are important to them. So I'm trying to maybe this is a good opportunity to take your show on the road.
Well, we have been getting emails with people with questions. This is a complicated issue, though, and but thank you for calling in, and thank you, Ed, and we'll go back to Norm now. So thanks so much.
Great.
Take care.
No problem. Thanks.
Well, I think China's going to end that way.
And we're going to be the same way because we got people, older and older people, on entitlements, and eventually the roof is going to collapse.
Well, Norm, on that up note, I'm kidding. Thank you so much for your work, and we will have you back. And I know how hard it is to get this complex subject handled, but we all thank you. Any parting questions, people? Nope. Thank you, Norm Kurland and the Center for Economic and Social Justice. And Norm, one more time,
all of this is written. The books are downloadable free. Kelso's books included. It's at CESJ CESJ.org. CESJ for Center for Economic and Social Justice. Or you can begin to see the political side of it if you do capitalhomestead.org. What's troubling America and the world today? From Hilaire Belloc, the society had fallen, much as our society has today, into a tangle wherein the bulk of men were disappointed and angry, and seeking for a solution to the whole group of social strains. There was indebtedness everywhere, the power of money and consequent usury. There was slavery everywhere. Society reposed upon it as ours reposes upon wage slavery today. There lay upon the freemen, already tortured with debt, a heavy burden of imperial taxation, and there was the irritant of existing central government interfering with men's lives. There was the tyranny of the lawyers and their charges. To become an owner without having to take property away from existing owners. With an idea of ownership. But most important is the right to the fruits of what you own. If you want to grow, issue new shares. If you're a shareholder, you have no right to a dividend. It's only if the board of directors or whoever controls the board decides you get a dividend. That everyone should be an owner of private property in the means of production. System is the problem, and the system can be changed. Now, if someone has a simpler, more populist plan to achieve a more inclusionary approach to economic democracy, let them come forward to challenge us.